بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كتاب الألفاظ والأدب وغيرها. This book pertaining to words that you should or should not use, etiquettes and other than that. The first chapter is about insulting or speaking negatively about time. From Abu Huraira, the Prophet says that Allah Jalla wa Ala says, so this is a hadith Qudsi, يؤذيني ابن آدم يسب الدهر وأنا الدهر أقلب الليل والنهار. The son of Adam annoys me. He insults time. But I am time. I turn the night and day. You can suffer misfortune through time. And the prohibition here is not to insult time. The habit or the customary practice of the Arab in those days would be that if some misfortune befell them, they would insult the time. So we are going through difficult times or times of suffering, they would insult the time. It is the time that has brought these misfortunes upon us. But the Prophet is telling us here, in this hadith, that if you insult time, you're actually insulting Allah Jalla wa Ala, because He is the one who turns the time and brings about these fortunes or misfortune. Note, there is no evidence in this hadith that one of the names of Allah is Ad-Dahr, the time. Because Allah Jalla wa Ala explains what He means when He says, Ana Ad-Dahr, I am time. He explains it by saying, أُقَلِّبُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارِ, I turn the night and the day. So it's not to be understood that one of His names is Ad-Dahr. Rather, the Sharia has given us an alternative when you suffer misfortune, which is to say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Also note that Allah Jalla wa Ala, He is the one who turns the night and the day. He's the one who turns the time. He in fact created time. And hence it is worth knowing that Allah Jalla wa Ala is outside or independent of time, just as He is outside or independent of three-dimensional space. And this is why He did not have a beginning, because if He was inside our time, which is inside this universe, then He had to have a beginning, because this universe had a beginning. And so therefore the time which is in this universe had a beginning. But Allah Jalla wa Ala had no beginning. And the only way this is possible is that He is not inside time, just as He is not inside any space. So that is to say, He is not inside the four-dimensional space-time of this universe. Let's take a look at the next chapter about naming the anab as karm. From Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, لا يقولن أحدكم للعنب الكرم إنما الكرم الرجل المسلم. None of you should call the grape as al-karm, because the karm is a Muslim man. The word karm is taken from karam, which means someone who is kind or noble. And this, the Prophet says, is a description of the Muslim man. So do not use the word karm to describe grapes, because this is what they used to do. They used to call grapes karm. Now, grapes can be taken to make khamar, as we know. And so to use a noble name like karm to describe grapes, which can be used to make something which is khabith, like khamar, is not befitting. So grapes, nor the trees from which these grapes grow, should be called karam or karoom or anything similar. In another narration, the Prophet said, لا تقولوا الكرم ولكن قولوا الحبلة. Do not call it karm, but rather call it al-habala. He gives an alternative. Al-habla is the grape tree. And there is a danger in calling the grapes karam, as we said, because khamar can be made from it. And so you'd also be calling khamar karm, because it's made from grapes. And khamar, which is khabith, can never be karm, which has this idea of being noble and kind. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most noble amongst you with Allah is the one who has most taqwa. And so the Muslim man and woman, of course, as long as they are observant in their deen, are karam. But notice the alternative given, and this is similar to how Allah Jalla wa Ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la taqulu ra'ina wa qulu unzurna. Do not say ra'ina, rather say unzurna. Give us some respite. So give people alternatives. Likewise with Bilal radiallahu anhu, when he entered a riba trade, the Prophet told him that this is riba, taking 1 sa of good quality dates with 2 sa of poor quality dates, and he gave him the alternative. Sell your poor quality dates for dirahim, and then with these dirahim, purchase the good quality dates. Likewise, when the Prophet said, do not say ma sha Allahu wa shit, rather say ma sha Allahu wahda. You should say what Allah willed alone. And this is better than saying what Allah and you willed. because then you're putting a human being on the same level as Allah Jalla wa'ala, and that is not befitting. The next hadith about calling somebody abd or ama, which means a male servant or a female servant. From Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, لا يقول أحدكم اسقي ربك أطعم ربك وضي ربك ولا يقول أحدكم ربي وليقل سيدي مولاي ولا يقول أحدكم عبدي أمتي وليقل فتايا فتاتي غلامي. One of you should not say to his servant, give your Rabb water to drink, or feed your Rabb, or help your Rabb make wudu. And one of you should not say, my Rabb, but rather he should say, my Sayyid, or my Mawla. And one of you should not say, my Abd, my servant, and Amati, my female servant, but rather you should say, Fataya, my young boy, or Fatati, my young girl, or Ghulami, my boy. We find from this narration the good mannerisms which are required from even the one who owns a servant, that when you're addressing your servant, do not tell him, feed your Rabb, or give drink to your Rabb, or help your Rabb make wudu, because in this there is a humiliation for your servant, if you are calling yourself a Rabb in addressing your servant. And also from the other direction, you are giving yourself a status more than you deserve, because the true Rabb is Allah Jalla wa'ala. So it is upon the master to be humble and not call himself a Rabb when addressing his servant, and to remain lowly and humble. Yes, it is true, somebody else can call him Rabb, as in Yusuf alayhi salam telling one of the inmates, وَقَالَ لِلَّذِي ظَنَّ أَنَّهُ نَاجٍ مِّنْهُمَا أُذْكُرْنِي عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ, mention me to your Rabb. But why is this allowed? It is allowed because Yusuf alayhi salam is not addressing his servant and calling himself Rabb. So notice the difference. Whom are you addressing? In the third person it's okay, but in addressing your own servant and calling yourself Rabb, no, that is not okay, because you are putting yourself on a level more than you deserve. And likewise, the master should not call his servant Abdi, my servant, or Amati, my female servant, because again, in this there is a humiliation for the servant, and you're looking down upon him. Rather, we give the alternative. Call your male servant Fataya, my young boy, or Ghulami, again meaning my boy, and your female servant Fatati, my young girl, because these types of words will not humiliate your servant. So just look at the mannerisms required even if you own a servant. Be lowly, be humble, be respectful. And the servant, he should not call his master Rabb, rather he should call his master Sayyid, which means master, or Mawlaya, which means my Mawla, and Mawla means master. Mawla has many meanings, but in this context it would mean my master. But you do not call him Rabb. The next chapter about the person saying Khabuthat nafsi, my soul has become khabith. From Aisha, that the Prophet said, لا يقولن أحدكم خبثت نفسي ولكن ليقل لقست نفسي. No one should say my soul has become khabith. Rather, he should say my soul has become annoyed or cross. Sometimes what happens is that you're going through a rough patch and you're feeling ill at ease. Maybe you're feeling stressed. You're not going through happy times. You have a lot on your mind, and you're generally feeling ill at ease and constricted. And so a person may say, Khabuthat nafsi, my soul has become khabith, which has this idea of being impure and evil. Khabith is a negative word, no doubt about that. The Prophet forbade us from using this word. It is not befitting. Rather, he gave us an alternative word, which is laqisat nafsi. Now, this would mean essentially the same thing. It means to say that my soul has become ill at ease, it becomes cross or annoyed. But the word laqisa does not have the same connotations as the word khabutha, which has negative, evil, impure connotations. The word laqisa does not, even if they mean generally the same thing in this particular context. Allah Jalla wa'ala says, Al-khabithatu lil-khabithina wal-khabithuna lil-khabithat. The evil women are for evil men and evil men for evil women. So if that's the case, then how can you say khabuthat nafsi, my nafs has become khabith, meaning ill at ease, feeling spiritually ill? We have to use words which are more fitting. We also learn the lesson which we learned In the last hadith, when you prohibit something, then give an alternative. This is a general rule. The next chapter about using the misk, which is a type of fragrance, and it is the best type of fragrance, and not refusing perfume given to you. From Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, the Prophet says that amongst Banu Israel, there was a woman who was very short. So she took 2 wooden legs to make herself look tall. So it's like she's walking on 2 wooden legs. She had a gold ring with an empty part inside it, and she filled it with misk. And the Prophet said that misk is the best of scents. She walked between the 2 women, and no one could recognize her, because she has made herself look taller than she already is, and people normally knew her to be short. And she made a gesture with her hand, shaking her hand. That is the narration. The shahid from the narration is where the Prophet said that the misk is the best of the scents. Even if it is the best of scents, Anas ibn Malik reports that he never smelt any misk better than the fragrance of the Prophet that came from his body, and he never felt any silk softer than the hands of the Prophet. In any case, we find misk is the best of scents, even if originally it was taken from the blood of the gazelle, and the blood of the gazelle is impure, as we know. But when it turns to misk, it becomes pure, because originally it does come from the blood in the belly of the gazelle. Why did this woman shake her hand in the air? And the reason is so that the smell of the misk can spread to the people so they would notice her. In other words, she is trying to create fitna by making men smell her fragrance. The Prophet informed us the first fitna for Bani Israel was of women. He says to us, إِنَّ الدُّنْيَا خَضِرَةٌ حُلْوَةٌ فَاتَّقُوهَا وَاتَّقُوا النِّسَاءَ فَإِنَّ أَوَّلَ فِتْنَةِ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ كَانَتْ فِي النِّسَاءِ. The world is green and sweet, so beware of it and beware of women. For the first fitna of Bani Israel was because of the women. And this particular hadith of the chapter gives us an example where this woman is shaking her hand with the misk ring on it so that people can smell her fragrance. In the Sunan, the Prophet ﷺ said, أَيُّمَا امْرَأَةٍ اسْتَعْطَرَتْ فَمَرَّتْ بِقَوْمٍ لِيَجِدُوا رِيحَهَا فَهِيَ زَانِيَةٌ. Any woman who puts on perfume and then passes by some people so that they may smell her perfume, meaning find her scent, then she is a fornicator. And this is obvious because she's trying to tempt the people, and only a fornicating woman would try to tempt people. That's how you get to fornicate. Also in the chapter from Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, مَنْ عُرِضَ عَلَيْهِ رَيْحَانٌ فَلَا يَرُدَّهُ فَإِنَّهُ خَفِيفُ الْمَحْمَلِ طَيِّبُ الرِّيحِ. Whoever is given the basil plant should not reject it because it is easy to carry and it has a nice smell. So if you're given any perfume, do not reject it. We know from the Sunnah the Prophet would not reject thib, perfume, if he was given it as a gift. He would be very fond of perfume and smelling nice. The Prophet said, حُبِّبَ إِلَيَّ مِن دُنْيَاكُمْ الطِّيبُ وَالنِّسَاءُ وَجُعِلَتْ قُرَّةُ عَيْنِي فِي الصَّلَاةِ. From this world of yours, perfume and women are beloved to me, and the salah is made as the delight of my eye. This hadith in Sunan an-Nasa'i, and also in the chapter. Nafi', the freed servant of Ibn Umar, reports that when Ibn Umar wanted to fumigate the room, he brought aloes wood and did not mix anything with it, or he mixed it with kafur, camphor, and then Ibn Umar said this is how the Prophet fumigated the room. That is to say, applying perfume to the room. So in this narration we find the asl, or the basic evidence, for spreading perfume in the room. Some people can burn a scented candle, or however you do it, it is all in accordance with the Sunnah. Also, if one asks what is the difference between khabuthat nafsi and laqisat nafsi, meaning is there actually a difference in meaning, we say no, they mean the same thing. The difference is in the connotations of the words, because khabuthat has the connotation of being impure and even evil, because that word can be used in those contexts, whereas laqisat does not have those connotations. So in addition to the meaning of the words, we need to pay heed to the connotations. One might also object and say that, do we not have the authentic hadith in Sahih Muslim about the one who does not get up for the night prayer, that he is going to wake up khabith an-nafs kaslan? So the Prophet uses khabith an-nafs. We say yes, but the Prophet is not linking it to his own self. The prohibition is linking it to your own personal self. Here the Prophet is just declaring what will happen. to somebody if he does not wake up for the prayer at night. Okay, let's take some review questions. So question number 1. The Prophet forbade insulting time as the people of Jahiliyyah would do, but what alternative did he leave us with? Question number 2. Why should the master not call his servants as abd or ama? Likewise, why should the word Rabb not be used in a conversation between a servant and his master? Question number 3. What evidence do we have that it is the practice of the Prophet to scent a room